Hello and welcome to the Northumbria Way podcast. My name's Emily Lavin and I'm the Marketing and Communications Officer at Northumbria Healthcare NHS Trust, and I'm delighted to be your podcast host for today. Today is International Women's Day, and a day that is celebrated across the globe to focus on the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. Today I'm joined by 4 female members of staff who have come from a range of different backgrounds in our trust. So hello everyone.
Hi.
I thought we'd just start off by introducing ourselves, so just saying where we work, how long we've worked in the trust for, and just our name as well.
So my name's Laura Straughair-Flaws. I'm a senior information analyst in information services, and I'm quite new at the trust, so I just joined last June, so I've not been here that long.
Hello, I'm Tracy Burn. I work in medical electronics, North Tyneside. I've worked for the trust for about 8 years. Previous to this job, I was at NSEC in the States.
I'm Charlene. I'm the head porter for one spec. I also oversee security as well. I've worked for the trust, it'll be 18 years in April.
I'm Birju Bartoli. I'm the Chief Executive for Northumbria Healthcare Trust. I have worked in the Trust for 20 years. I started off here as an operational service manager on a temporary 12-month contract, and 20 years later I'm still here.
Fantastic, and it's great to see the breadth of everyone that we've got on the table today and how long you've been here. So today we're just going to be talking a bit about our roles. Everyone that we've got on the table we're sort of seen as in stereotypical male-dominated roles, so we're exploring that aspect as well, and just sort of about what International Women's Day means to you all as well. So it's great to be joined by a panel who work in various roles across the trust. I thought we'd just share some of our backgrounds as to how we got into our roles. So myself, I came here from a B2B background. I worked for a technology company before this. Comms had always been something I was interested in, and I just really wanted to get into the NHS, and this has been brilliant ever since. So Laura, do you want to give a bit of information how you got into your role?
So previously, before here, I came from a research background, so I worked as a research associate at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. I did my PhD there before then, and so I was living in Glasgow with my husband, and we made the decision to move back home, back to our native northeast, and I thought that a job at the NHS would provide it, aligned both with my values and the lifestyle I wanted.
I was just a production operator in a factory for many years. Went to Siemens, a semiconductor plant, got made redundant, did a few temp jobs, went back when it was Atmel, and they were pushing for maintenance technicians within, sort of promoting staff. So I got a job interview, went to college, became a maintenance tech at Atmel, left there, went to a couple of temp jobs, then ended up at the RVI as a maintenance assistant in the States, then went to the NSEC Hospital. Next door, the department next door was medical electronics, and they were advertising for a job, so applied for it, didn't get it, but it was at one spec, so wanted to stay a bit more local, and then a North Tyneside job came up, so applied for that, got it, and I've just progressed up through sort of in medical electronics.
Have you learned a lot of that on the job?
Yeah. We've done a lot of outside training as well. Companies come in and train with sort of at other hospitals, but I've been to Blackpool, Bristol, Hemel Hempstead doing outside training courses to progress us through the training and
does
stuff.
the trust support you in doing that? Yeah.
So everything's sometimes it's difficult for childcare trying to fit the courses in because they're only on certain times, and it just so happens that the training course I'm going on in April is my daughter's birthday, but the next one's August, school holidays, the next one's October, school holidays. It's just sort of it's just one of them things, but yeah, it's just trying to fit them in around your home commitments.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you get to a point whereby you think you finish school and you think, I'm never going to study again, or you finish university or whatever it is, and you think, I'm never going to study again. And then I think we all go full circle where you go, well, actually, you have your kids, you have your family, and then you start to think, well, now there's a bit of time for me, and I do want to learn a bit more, or I do want to do a bit more. in whatever shape or form, not necessarily like the traditional ways, which I think is really good that the organisation supports that.
I was really surprised at that when in my old job I felt like it was just education had stopped and like you didn't just go on and learn, but like when I came to the trust and I saw how many people were developing and doing courses, and I was like, oh, this is actually good that people still do that, and it's really good that the trust supports you in that as well.
So I've worked in pretty much facilities my whole career. So I started fresh from school, running back and forward from sixth form to the catering department, getting changed there Monday to Friday. Obviously too young to go out and party with my friends at that time. But yeah, so from there, I wasn't massively keen on working in the catering department, I must admit. Far too hot in there and too much going on. So I then went into domestics, which I love, absolutely love cleaning, so it was a no-brainer. I developed into a team leader post, and then when NSEC opened, I transferred across as the domestic supervisor. So at the time, I knew I wanted like progression as in like a management kind of way, but it was the wrong department for no reason in particular. It just wasn't for me. So I am quite a tomboy naturally, and I just thought, right, what can I do now? So then I actually applied for portering, got into the portering and absolutely loved it. I knew that was my department, that's where I needed to be. An opportunity came up Wandsbeck, so I applied for that and I'd become the charge hand porter there. Again, absolutely loved it. Close to home, so great for school runs, and could work my personal life around my work life as well. And when the head porter opportunity came, I applied for that and I was successful. So now I oversee portering and security.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you're like in charge of security and stuff, because obviously that is like very much affiliated with men.
Fab. Birju?
This working in the NHS is my second career, so I'm a scientist, a bit like yourself, from background. I moved up to the northeast in 1997 to do my PhD at Newcastle, and then moved over. I think I did a postdoc there as well, and then fell out of love with it a little bit. I got fed up of the constant applying for grants. I wanted something a bit more, and if I'm honest, I think I missed some human interaction. So many petri dishes and flasks that you can, talk to. And so I came across the National Management Training Scheme, NHS Management Training Scheme, and applied for that. And it was one of those things where you think, well, I'll give it a go. Sounds all right. And then the further you kind of got into the process, you start to think, well, actually, I quite want this now. And was fortunate enough to get a place on that scheme. And this trust was the first job I had coming off the scheme. And then I joined, like I said earlier, on a temporary contract as an operational services manager in medicine. And then over the next 20 years, I've kind of worked pretty much, I think, other than in community, in all of the other business units, sort of gone a bit zigzag in terms of my experience. And then obviously got this job in January, which was great. Bit of a surprise. Didn't think, this wasn't some big career plan. I've kind of been very fortunate in terms of my career, being afforded opportunities within the organisation of if I, wanting something more or wanting to get my teeth into something, being given those opportunities, which I think the organisation is really good at doing, and hopefully that will continue.
No, fab. Really good to hear that. So just moving on, a survey had found that 53% of women have experienced feelings of self-doubt, incompetence and being underqualified in their roles. So I was just wanting to ask, has anyone around this table ever experienced imposter syndrome? Because I feel like it is quite common in women.
Yeah, I think it's quite common, like in PhDs as well, because when I started my PhD, every day I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, that like I'd taken the place of somebody else who was more qualified, I suppose, because a PhD is so open-ended, you find in your own way. So every day I was sitting in that office, I always felt like like I wasn't meant to be there. And it's only with time that I kind of like gained that confidence. So actually when I moved here, I felt a lot more confident than I'd ever felt in academia. So I knew I had a lot of transferable skills that I could help a trust.
I don't think I've never felt that I wasn't good enough for my job, or I've always been confident in that, but I'm not afraid to ask for help if I need it as well. And I think that's probably the best quality to have, just ask for help. And it doesn't matter who you ask for, someone will eventually know the answer. I don't know if it's, I don't know if you've just said earlier when you moved back like down this area, is it that people from the northeast are a bit more friendlier, or?
Well, I think that's the thing, because I lived in Glasgow. I think Scottish people, like especially Glaswegian people, are very akin to like northeast because they have like a big shipbuilding industry. So I did feel very comfortable with them. However, like working at a university is like a lot of people from different countries, from all around. But I do know when I did my bachelor's at Newcastle, I was always self-conscious of my accent. Even though people are literally coming from around the country to study at Newcastle, I always felt like I had to tone like my accent down and enunciate and stuff. So
I think I have. No, I think I have. I do. For me, it's how you manage it. So you periodically have this little voice that might come into your head, depending on, not on a daily basis, but in certain scenarios that you might be sitting in. I was at a dinner in London where the great and the good were all sitting round, very experienced chief execs, and you're sort of sitting there and you're thinking, all right, what am I doing here? And literally you sit there, but you can't, it's how you manage that. You can't let that take over your own thoughts, if that makes sense. And for me, I think that's really important. It's a bit like what you were saying about how do you manage those thoughts on a, for me, it's not on a daily basis because I feel comfortable within the organisation. I feel comfortable with the people we work with, but it's more externally when you meet very experienced, for me, very other experienced, predominantly male chief execs, that you start to think, should I be here? Should I not be here? But I think you find out afterwards from that particular event, sitting in the dinner, nobody said anything in that room that was, oh my God, that's amazing, that's rocket science, how did they know that? Or it was all just common sense. And I think there's a frame of mind how you get people to start to think they're just normal people. They're human, they have kids, they have other families, they shout, they scream, they, whatever it is, they're just normal people. And it's how you manage that, because you're making them into this person. They're not. They're just not normal. And I think it's reminding yourself of that.
No, that's a really good way of putting it, because it's like, when you were a kid or something and you'd have to do a speech and they'd be like, oh, just picture everyone like naked in the crowd. It's sort of like that, isn't it? It's like, imagine them as a normal person, just imagine them going about their everyday life.
yeah.
And it's funny, just on that, not most people, but when you look, when you're not in that position, you can see there's some people that are on their phones, there's some people flicking through, they're not all, you've played it in your head that they're all waiting for you and they're going to hang on every word, and you soon realise, and they're not. They're just, some will be listening, some won't be listening, some will be probably doing their shopping, whatever it is, our brains turn it into, very clever, turn it into something that it's not, and it's how you manage your own brain, I suppose.
Yeah, so we become our own imposter. So I think that's something that women do though.
Even coming here today though, I was thinking, like prep for it, but I'm thinking you and you are probably into the same sort of, oh God, got this to do today.
Stop you, you said you and you. Me too. And that's what it is, because your mind has turned me into something that I'm not. Do you know what I mean? I'm just the same as you, and the same worries, and for me there is something about, and I try and remember this an awful lot. So I've got a son and a daughter, and my two complete opposites. So My son is super confident, almost to the point of you have to say, I don't think so. And my daughter is confident, but not like him. And I want her to know that you can do, what are you afraid of? You go and speak to that person, you know, trying to push them all the time to say, and you want them to see that in you so that they think that's normal. I don't want her to see, oh, Mum was a bit worried because she had to do a podcast or she had to do a presentation. I might be, but I don't ever want her to see that. And I guess you'll all be feeling the same thing.
You've got to turn it and sort of like think that everybody else is thinking the same.
Yeah.
And you know, you're not the only one.
Yeah. So moving on to another topic, I read an article that suggested that some women are afraid to celebrate their successes due to modesty and fear what others will think. Obviously there'll be times in all of our careers where we've achieved something and we want to celebrate it. So I was just wondering, are there any times in your career that you've not felt comfortable to celebrate your achievements and your successes?
Oh no, I put mine on Facebook.
The greatix.
I was,
a copy of the greatix and get your photo taken.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got all my certificates and that. Yeah, I think it's a shame if some women do hide their successes because if we're working really hard and juggling children and work, and why shouldn't we celebrate our successes and be proud for what we've done?
I feel that way sometimes. So we've got like we have like an internal department meeting like once a month, and throughout the month you can like say when people have like anonymously you like nominate such and such for doing something, and when my name comes up, like I do physically feel embarrassed sometimes.
Really?
Like, yeah, because I don't know, I just feel like embarrassed to have my name up there.
Are you quite shy as a person?
I always used to think I was, but when I started doing my PhD, my supervisor always said I was like really charming. I was like, are we looking at the same person? Because I'm not sure. So it's weird that like that's my perception of myself. Because I think like once like I'm like get to know people, I'm not sure.
I'm an identical twin, so I've always had a fight for attention. So Claire's also, she's a charge-hand porter as well.
Right.
So for me, it's kind of, she's at Wandsbeck as well, yeah. She is a big reason why I end up applying for portering, because she used to say, you'll love it, you'll love it. And I can remember when I did eventually get a portering position, she had sent us a text message. It was really nice, and it was like, I'm so happy you're finally getting a job that you're going to love. There's no better feeling than helping people. Aww. And I just knew. And then my first day there, and met patients and sat with them, and that for me that's the best part of being a porter.
And I think, going slightly tangential, so I have and some of the porters at NSEC would probably say this because they think they see it, they make fun of me at NSEC. I have a bit of a soft spot for them because I've seen what with being in my old job, being on call, see what they do day in, day out. And I've watched some of them, and I've had to walk away because I've been brought to tears, where myself and a particular porter has taken a gentleman to the ward who then started to become quite unwell, was choking. This porter got a sick bowl, went and helped the gentleman, stayed with it, and it was really, maybe, I don't know whether it was because I was tired or it was really moving to say, God, you really care, and I don't know, I sat there thinking, do you know, I went back to him afterwards, said, do you know what a difference you will have made to that patient who, it's horrible when you're feeling rubbish and you're being sick. Yeah. And actually he was there for him, he said, it's all right, and held sick bowl. And they do an amazing job, and that difference to a patient, because that's their first interaction when they're really quite vulnerable, means a lot.
It does, I agree. I think that's one thing that I used to watch the porters when I was young, and I used to be domestic in A&E, and I used to watch the porters back and forward, and I think that's another reason as well why I felt, I can do that, and like just make the patients care better, you know. Like I've got a lot of empathy, and I just knew, I thought that's for me, that.
Birju, I'm going to direct this question at you. So I read an article about female representation on UK boards has risen from 36% to 40% in 2023. So you've been on the board at Northumbria for a number of years. How has the female representation changed over the years?
So it's probably changed the other way, I would say. So I've been a board member, I think, for 12 years now. And I think, and I say this a lot, I think we're a bit weird as an org, that we buck the trend. So historically, I think our board has had, and it's different between execs and non-execs. So the executive element of the board has had more females on than males historically. That's just shifted the other way now. And then we've always probably had more non-exec men than women. And at the minute that's kind of just rebalancing itself a little bit. We're going through a bit of a change for obvious reasons. Despite that, though, I would say that the women on our board are very strong, and there is nobody that is shy or retiring, and will get their views across. It's a very respectful board, but nobody is afraid to say what they think or challenge, or it doesn't matter who they're talking to, they will more than happily challenge each other, which is what you would want from a unitary board. And I think that's always been the case. It was in my prior role, it is in this role. I know elsewhere in the NHS, there are more male-dominated on the executive side. I think the non-exec, you're kind of, I don't want to say regulated in this way, but you're expected to have a balance, more of a balance within your non-executive cohort. The execs happen to be who they happen to be, and in theory, the people best for the job. And historically, so I know I've gone to, because I've grown up in this organisation, I've never worked in a different organisation. When I've gone elsewhere to other external meetings, all of a sudden you realise I'm the only woman in the room, and that is a really weird feeling, because you're so used to not, I don't think, being a thing up here at all. And I can remember one, and I still remember, it was many years ago, I don't know, maybe 2016, 2017. So it was when Jim Mackey, previous chief exec, he was seconded to NHSI at the time. He was the chief exec of NHSI at the time. And I'd been invited down to attend a meeting. And there was maybe 4 or 5 of us in a room. The others were all chief execs, and I was there. All very experienced chief execs. And there was one other woman in the room who was just brilliant. She was, I won't give names, but she was a smaller lady who, when you want to say, bet she's a force to be reckoned with. And she's brilliant, and I still keep in touch with her. And the men in the room, I think, except Jim, didn't matter. I might as well have not been there. I was invisible. And even the kind of chatter between them, it was quite just between them. There was nothing about, okay, let's include everybody in the room. And it was really interesting because there was a discussion going, and Jim was kind of chairing the discussion. And I raised my hand, because you think, you know what, I'm here, so I'm going to say my bit. Put my hand up to speak, and Jim went, oh, Birju, what's your thoughts on this, and what do you think about that? Just in the way that Jim would have always done. And it was only when he did that the others were like, oh, okay, maybe we do need to speak to her, and it was so evident. I remember having a conversation with Jim afterwards saying, did you see what happened there? And because he's so not like that. It was interesting because it was almost giving, okay, she's acceptable to speak to, kind of thing. So that was a bit strange, and I've always carried that. But it's interesting because I've seen a couple of those people since. Nice as pie. So it's interesting, but I don't think they would know what impact that had. Yeah. But I guess you learn yourself during those things about what you would do differently for others. So I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, but I would always make sure that there are other people in the room who either might not know other people, to try and include them, because I know what it feels like to be sat on the outside of the other people who all sort of know each other in the room.
So Tracy, the engineering sector is aiming for a target of 30% of the workforce being female by 2030. Do you think there is equal female representation in your role, and is there room for improvement?
It's definitely not, because we've only got me, another woman up at Wansbeck, and an apprentice who are female. So, I mean, out of, I don't know, just say 30 staff, 3 women. So it's a case of it's definitely not represented, but it's an industry sort of like, you have to come into this industry, you have to have that background. And I would never have thought I would be in medical electronics. You know, like 7 years ago. I can remember sort of when I was working in estates, I mean, that's an unusual thing as well, like working with all the men in estates. I was a maintenance assistant and I was emptying bins, I was unblocking toilets. And it was just a job I did, and I enjoyed it. And it was a case of like, my husband said, I had said about medical electronics being in the department next door, and he'd said, would you not fancy that? And I was like, oh no. And I was like, but then it was a case of when the job became available, I thought, no, why not? You know, like, why not apply for it? You know, and there was only one other woman at that time. You know, so it is sort of. I'd like to say, you know, there will be more women coming into it, but there's not the women with a background or the. I don't know. It's a small community. I think medical electronics. It's. I'd never even thought or even heard of medical electronics.
I was going to say, do you think it's because people don't know what it is or what it might be about or how to get into it?
I mean, one of the guys I used to work with here, he's retired now, but he was from like IT, so he's come across on that side. And it's you've got to have sort of like that background. And I wouldn't say I had that background. I was just doing my job in maintenance. I think you've got to sort of like, it's like any job, you start off at that level and you hopefully can build up. But, you know, I think I just put myself out there. When I was in the States, I was in their department in medical electronics, getting all of the manuals, trying to learn what they were doing to go into the interview and shine. But I can't see it being a big difference in 2030. Maybe there's a few more, but I'd like more women to be in the next to us.
I'm guessing that's similar to your role as well, Charlene, because I think there is 10% of females make up the portering teams in the trust. So what do you think what can be done to get more females into portering?
I think whatever they're doing right, but because 10 years ago that wouldn't have been 10%. Right. I know 10 years ago I could only name 2 female porters. Right. One was actually my sister and another lady who worked at North Tyneside. Now I've worked with all different sites and plenty of women who are portering. I could probably rhyme off about 15 at least. So whatever they're doing right. But I do know, like last year I attended like a road show at St Daliville, and it was for young students who were just finishing school and looking for job opportunities.
Careers event.
Yeah, I was there, and me and another porter together were chatting to them, putting stab vests on them. It seemed like the girls were more interested than the boys. Right. So, and for me as well, when I'm on an interview panel, I'm interviewing loads of females now, which is, it's just lush. You know, I want more women, of course I do, but we've got 5 porters now, that include myself, who work at Wansbeck, and you know the men are okay, that they're absolutely fine, but I think you've got to be a certain type of person to be a porter as well, because there is heavy lifting, there's a lot of furniture removals, and I mean we're given the correct equipment and stuff like that, so it does look like heavy graft, and sometimes it is, but you know, with the correct training and that, it's just to more or less just say to girls, you know, it's not just pushing patients around, it's not just the element of moving things. Yes, we are a bit like caretakers of the hospital, we are, but seeing girls on the corridor doing a portering role, they were probably like, oh, actually, I would do that. I probably wouldn't have went into portering if it wasn't seeing my sister do it. So is it just that young females now who are looking to get in NHS or NHFM, or they seeing the likes of myself and what other female colleagues, and they're like, oh, well, actually, I can do that. I want to be a porter. So I think in 10 years' time, I reckon it'll be 50-50. I really do.
That's really good. And Laura, a survey found that women only account for around 26% working in tech. Do you think that the tech industry could be held back due to a lack of female representation?
Yeah, I mean, when I think of like historical kind of scientific advances where women were like contributed, like definitely. So when we think of like the computer, like a lot of people attribute it to like forgive me if anybody knows this, to Charles Babbage, but like actually there was like a lady, Ada Lovelace, who like contributed to giving us the modern computer. And not just that, but when I look around and I think of like female CEOs, and I think like women weren't in tech would have no Canva. I love Canva for making presentations and posters. Would have no like Bumble or girls who code and stuff, and it's just really, yeah, I think whenever you exclude like a whole demographic, you're excluding like a whole, you know, wealth of ideas and contributions that could be made and stuff. So actually, what it's interesting, I never ever thought that I would be a programmer. And when I went to high school, I went to a girls' school, and we had a counterpart boys' school, and programming wasn't offered at the girls' school, it was only offered at the boys' school. We were offered IT, so I would never have even picked that up and thought that I would be a programmer. It's not until I did my PhD that I had to learn, and I felt a little bit disadvantaged when I look at like younger people who are starting like in the trust and in my department and have these amazing skills that I've kind of had to do some catching up.
So the theme of International Women's Day is inspire inclusion. So I was just wondering if anyone had any thoughts of how we can inspire female inclusion throughout our trust.
Visibility, I would say, like even like having Birju, like, you know, like you're the face on all of our emails and all sorts of newsletters. I think it's amazing.
That's
like,
a scary thought.
It's scary. It's good for the rest of us. But in my department, like 80% of our band-aids are all women. Like I have some really amazing women when I look around information services that I see like that like really inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. And I see now, like seeing advertisements, and a lot of the advertisements have got females on. You would normally say like a male face on a porter and poster, where now it's like females. So yeah,
And vice versa as well for nurses. You see the men nurses, and it's I think that's a opposite side of it, isn't it? You know.
I was just having a chat with one of the porters this morning who said that like you're seeing more females now in like male dominant job roles, and you're seeing more males in what people would perceive a female dominant, so nurses, domestic. So I think we're finding the balance, and I think it's quite inspirational for the younger generation.
Definitely.
Because they get to come into a world where everyone's equal, and it's not just like you're a girl, you're staying at home looking after the children. You know, I mean, we've still got to do that and work full time, but they don't have to look at that, do they? They can just quite go into a job role and be who they want to be, you know.
I think as well, there's about giving everybody an opportunity to be the best that they can be, and having those opportunities open for people. And it's not for everybody, and that's okay. But people who want to progress, want to try something different, want to do new things, want to further study, I think it's part of being a good organisation to encourage that, be that in work or even outside of work, to say, well, look, we'll support you to do that, because if that can benefit you, you have the knock-on effect of it benefiting your families, etc. as well. So I kind of was brought up in an environment where, and because I'm old, traditional education was really important, and I've learnt through my kids that it's not the only way. You know, I thought my kids would go through that traditional route and the same route that I went to, and it took a bit of readjustment for myself of saying, well, actually now there's lots of other ways that you can still do really well. You can, you know, the apprenticeship program that we've got is fantastic. So I think, and that's everybody, that's not just a female thing, you know, men, women, whoever, if you want to learn, we've got lots of opportunities and avenues that you can go down now that encourages that wider learning. And I think that's the inclusion bit, because all of that then, and it's almost like paying it back, that benefits not only individuals, but it benefits families, benefits communities.
Brilliant. And finally, just quickly, what advice would you give to a woman who's thinking about entering a male-dominated role?
Do it. You've just got to go for it. It's a case of like any job that you go for, you know, you're nervous about starting any new job, but stepping into that, it can be out your comfort zone, but it's a case of like, I've found every job I've done for the past 15 years or something, been very male-dominant sort of roles, but I've been welcomed. I've had no problem with anybody, really. There's been nobody that I can say sort of like male or female. Everybody's been as welcoming, so I tend to find I get on better with the men than sometimes the females, you know, but it's just because that's where they are, that I work with them, so, you know, they have to put up with my conversation, I've got to put up with their conversation, so.
I don't think of my role as being, it's quite interesting being part of this conversation, because I historically, and I think partly this is because of the North East, I've not necessarily seen my role as a male-dominated role. That might, maybe if I was elsewhere in the country, I might see that, and that probably is, if you did the stats on it, maybe it is that. I would just say, if it's the job, forget what else is around. If you want that job, go for it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I hope you've all found it interesting and useful as well. So, brilliant.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.